All right. Welcome back to Inspired Forward. I'm Dan Trinidad, and I'm really excited to get to know our guest, Paul Moore. After graduating with an engineering degree and then an MBA from Ohio State, Paul entered the management development track at Ford Motor Company in Detroit. And after 5 years, he departed to start a staffing company with a partner. They sold it sold it to a publicly traded firm 5 years later for $2.9 million. Along the way, Paul was a finalist for the Ernst & Young's Michigan Entrepreneur of the Year Award for 2 straight years, actually, 96 and 97. Paul later entered the real estate sector where he flipped over 50 homes and 25 high-end waterfront lots. He appeared on HGTV's House Hunters, rehabbed and managed rental properties, built a number of new homes, developed a subdivision, and started 2 successful online real estate marketing firms. 3 successful developments, including assisting with the development of a Hyatt hotel and a very successful multifamily project. It led him to start Wellings Capital, where he is now. Paul's an author of The Perfect Investment, Create Enduring Wealth from the Historic Shift to Multi-Housing in 2016. Paul also co-hosts a wealth building podcast called How to Lose Money, is a featured guest on numerous real estate podcasts. He's a regular author for Bigger Pockets. He's married with 4 children, lives in Central Virginia, and I am excited to have him on today. Paul, welcome.
Hey, thank you so much. But why would you have a guy on who has a podcast called How to Lose Money?
Because I have this sneaky feeling that you figured out the benefits from it. You know, people out there struggling a little bit.
Yeah, right.
So tell me, how did you? So you came out of college with two degrees, and I'm sure with the vision to get a job and move up the corporate ladder.
Yeah.
Tell me briefly, kind of how that started, and really, more importantly, what prompted the mind shift to get out and start doing your own thing.
Well, Dan, I don't think I knew any entrepreneurs growing up. I don't even know if I knew what the word meant, except maybe the local pharmacist who owned his little corner store there. But, when I got I got to Ford Motor Company after my MBA, and I found myself, along with a friend who also graduated with me and went to Ford with me, we were bored pretty quickly. We really liked Ford. We have the utmost respect for Ford Motor Company and the job and everything, but we were bored. And so we started spending evenings and weekends strategizing how to start an oil change shop, near Detroit, or start a property tax consulting business, which we knew nothing about. And we just found ourselves, wanting to do something else or add something to, as a side hustle. And after about 13 months, my one-day business partner quit Ford, and he started his own company, and I joined him about 4 years later.
Wow.
And so we quit. Actually, my wife was 7 months pregnant with our first child. We had other traumatic stuff happening in our family with her parents and with a beloved pet that died, and all this stuff happened about the same time. So it was really hard time for my wife, and I'm amazed that she went along with this because she's super risk averse, but she did. And it's been an up and down roller coaster ride since. It's starting to smooth out in my mid 50s now, but yeah, it hasn't always been easy to be I was in the past a serial entrepreneur.
And didn't even know what an entrepreneur was.
Yeah, right.
That's good. Yeah, so similar with me, I did the same thing. Started a business at the time I'm having a baby, and life just changing quickly and taking on that risk. I think now what I did, and I'm not totally sure I have the wherewithal to do it today. So I compliment you. So you started a company and you built it successfully and sold it for a lot of money. Was that the initial goal, is to build something to sell, or did you reach a point of not enjoying it anymore?
No, it wasn't that. We built a PEO, a professional employer organization, which is an HR staffing outsourcing firm. And we figured we would run it, and I figured I'd be working there till I was, like for 20, 30, 40 years. And I've still got a friend who owns a PEO now that started the same time with us. But what happened is Wall Street got really excited about professional employer organizations, PEOs, back in the late 90s, 96 and 97, actually. And I heard, I think 200 companies went public in 96 and 7, and one of them really wanted a Michigan office, and they offered to pay a premium to us to sell our Detroit office to them. And so it was a great opportunity. I really wanted to do nonprofit work. I really wanted to get into doing some other type of things, and so it was a great opportunity for me to exit. The problem, Dan, and there's a lot of problems with this story, let me tell you, but I didn't know the difference between speculating and investing. And so I thought, I'm just going to go be an investor. But I actually was a speculator. Now, investing is when your principal is safe and you've got a chance to make a return. Speculating is when your principal is not at all safe and you've got a chance to make a return. And I confused the two, and I invested some and made a lot of money, and I also speculated some and lost a lot of that money. And so it was a rough ride until I learned the difference years later.
So how'd you deal with, that mistake? How'd you get yourself to kind of work through it and bounce back?
Well, so, thankfully, a lot of the investments and some speculations I made as well were in real estate. And even my worst mistake in real estate, I was able to recover from because there was real tangible property involved. Now, fast forward from then about 10 years later, when I invested in a wireless internet company, there was no real tangible value to it. It was completely speculative, and we lost all our money. When we threw money down a hole in the ground 10,000 feet down in North Dakota to drill for oil and expected a 10 to 20 to 50%, 50x return, I should say, wow. We were speculating. But when I invested in real estate, I had a tangible value, and I was able to bounce back. And that's one of the reasons I love real estate.
Now, is this what you learned by accident, or was it strategic?
I don't know how to answer that. I think it was a combination of providence and accident, and maybe a little bit strategic along the way. But I think it was probably less strategic than I would like to believe.
Mm. And you started in real estate, from what I gather, by buying homes and flipping them, or buying real estate and flipping it?
Yeah, I had a nonprofit organization for a couple of years in in Virginia. After we moved to the mountains here of Virginia, we were kind of reacting against Detroit imploding in the late 90s. And so we moved to the mountains of Virginia and got pretty bored with this nonprofit I was doing, and began to buy houses on the courthouse steps and resell them for a profit. It was later known as house flipping. And we did dozens and dozens of those, and it worked out really well overall.
What year was that?
We started in 2000. Okay. And by the year 2003, I was thinking, well, if I can make money doing this, I should be able to make more money doing modular homes, which is, in this part of the country, modular homes are a stick-built home in a factory that is transported on site and built to stick-built regular, building standards. I know it's different in different parts of the country. And then we went from that to doing an actual ground-up stick-built home, which was a disaster for me. And then we actually did a subdivision, and we flipped a whole lot of high-end, expensive waterfront lots at Smith Mountain Lake in Virginia as well. And so those were some of the things I did in my earliest years of real estate.
Wow. So where do you have the most success?
I think the most dollars per hour of all that, by far, was in flipping high-end waterfront lots. We would actually, so somebody might have bought a waterfront lot at Smith Mountain Lake in the 70s or 80s for, let's make up a number, $50,000. And here we are in the year 2004, and that lot, I could go in and offer them, let's say, $250,000 for that highly overgrown lot that they couldn't even see the water from. It was just full of trees and weeds and brush. And we would offer them $250,000 cash. We would go in and clear the lot, leave some beautiful, larger trees here and there, put a park bench on it, put an 8x12 sign on it, and maybe get a dock permit. And then we would sell it for about $120,000 profit in a few months.
Just the dirt.
Yeah. So we were selling these waterfront lots back in the boom, pre-recession for, $350,000, $450,000. I even sold one lot for, I think, $600,000. I think I've sold several lots over $600,000. And we're talking in a remote area of Virginia. This is not California, but if you've been to Tahoe and you're near the West Coast, check out Smith Mountain Lake. Near the East Coast, it's incredible. And we think of it as like the Lake Tahoe of the East. So Smith Mountain Lake, Virginia. I still have a website there, in fact, where I sell leads to realtors. It's called smithmountainhomes.com.
Got it. So you're selling leads to realtors.
It's not my main thing, but I have a side gig where I sell leads to 7 realtors who take those leads and they run with them. And if they can close a deal, then we share the commission.
Are those leads generated off of social media?
They're mainly from Google AdWords, some Bing ads, some Facebook ads. And we are always experimenting with new, better ways to do that.
Mm-hmm. So it's a big jump to go from flipping single family houses and going in and improving a lot to much bigger properties and hotels. How do you make that shift? Is it just a matter of learning the process and making money and going a little bigger?
I just had a thought I'd never had before, and I will be just really honest with you and share it. We jumped into those things not knowing what we're doing, and we had to make all the mistakes along the way, all the learning curve, everything, from the ground up. And our first multifamily went spectacularly well, and one of the reasons was we built it. So we were investing in this oil and gas deal in 2010 in North Dakota. And my buddy would fly up there in his a small jet he had, and we would never be able to find a place to stay. We had to fly back to Bismarck or South Dakota or somewhere else to find housing because there were typically men in their pickup trucks all over the place, in parks, parking lots, along the road, even sleeping in their trucks in this brutal North Dakota winter, because there was no place to stay. So we said, hey, why don't we build a multifamily quickly there? And we did it from the ground up, and oil prices were over $100 a barrel, and it went really, really well. Now, I think that my thought has changed on that now, though. I would rather, I'm in my mid-50s, and I think my thinking's changed to where I think it's better to harness myself. It's better to find a great operator with great experience and link arms with them. And that's what our company is doing now. We're finding great operators with decades of experience. They've made the mistakes. They've got the track record. They know what they're doing. And honestly, I would not invest with myself 10 years ago. In other words, if I today, knowing what I know now, had an opportunity to invest with a deal that I brought to the table 10 years ago, I wouldn't do it. I would want to find an experienced operator who's had, decades, hopefully, and lived through the recession, even 2 recessions. And that's my investing philosophy now.
Yeah. So Wellings Capital, and I guess that's what you're doing. So is your strength raising capital and finding great deals? Is that your primary role?
Yeah, it's close. Our strengths are raising capital and marrying that capital to great operators. So we're actually looking not for deals, we're looking for great operators in certain asset classes. So we're partnering up with mobile home park operators who have done really well over years or hopefully decades. Self-storage operators, multifamily operators who have again, years and years of experience and track record that we really like and trust.
Man, I love that. I'll be calling you because that's certainly my philosophy too. I'm not going to do it myself. I'm just going to put money in the hands of somebody that knows how to do it. And I agree with those sectors, mobile home parks, and are doing so well. Apartments, I'm a little uncertain. The cap rates are so low right now,
Yeah.
but maybe that's where opportunity lies.
Yeah, no, I agree. I actually wrote a book on multifamily, and I'm doing a talk next week in Irvine, California about, why a multifamily author is not investing in multifamily right now. And that's why.
Yeah.
It's just overheated.
Do you see that changing anytime soon, or what would cause that to change?
I don't know. I think it's just mainly about psychology. I just read a book from Howard Marks called Mastering the Market Cycles, and he talks about the significant role that psychology and human emotion plays in all this. And he says, therefore, it's hard to predict timing and the amplitude of these up and down cycles. But he says they absolutely will happen. And I just wonder, though, I wonder, Dan, is there a new normal? I mean, if normal cap rate that, things cycled around a normal cap rate of 8%, let's say they went from 7 to 9 for years and they cycled around a mean of 8. What if the new mean is 6? I don't know. I know there's still going to be cycles, but when I look at New Zealand and Australia and Israel and Europe, where the normal cap rates are like New York or LA or San Francisco cap rates here, I'm kind of wondering if we've just kind of reached kind of a new norm where commercial real estate investing is so popular with very, very good reason, by the way. But it's so popular, I think the cap rates might just be compressed for the long run now.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you for that. That's good insight. So prior to the call, you told me about a story about kind of a rough period of time you went through, and asked if, I wanted you to share that. And I would love to have you share it right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had almost $2 million in the bank in 1997 when we sold our company. And a decade later, on the cusp of the Great Recession, we had $2.5 million, but not in the bank, in debt. And actually, around November of 2007, of course, we had no idea how bad things were about to get. It's easy to think you know how it would feel then, but we didn't know because we didn't know what was going to happen. And, it could have just as well been a quick blip and things might have improved in 2008, but that was not the case, of course. And we had $2.5 million in debt. Every bit of it was tied to real estate. And my partner announced that he would have to leave the company in January 2008. He could no longer pay half of these interest payments, which were enormous for all these waterfront lots we had, including a 5-acre lot that had I think it was $860,000 debt on it. And we were planning to subdivide that lot into 5 1-acre waterfront lots. Now, that was the speculative part of real estate. We were speculating that there'd be a public road run in front of this 5-acre parcel, and it wasn't there. It wasn't coming anytime soon. And by the way, 11 years later, it's still not there today. But we were speculating, and we were wrong. And very, very foolish move, by the way, on our part. And at any rate, one morning, I have this practice of meditating every morning, and I was praying and meditating, and I had this really clear thought. What would George Mueller do? WWGMD. And now George Mueller, for those of you who don't know, was a hellion in Germany in the early 1800s, and he became a pastor, and he moved to England. And he really wanted to show the world that you did not need to beg for money. You didn't need to go out and, do a lot of marketing and everything, that the money would be there if you were doing something really important with it. So kind of an ethereal, philosophical, faith-based type thought. And so George went out and started adopting orphans, and he brought in 10, then dozens, and then hundreds of orphans, and eventually he cared for a total over the whole century of about 10,000 orphans.
Wow.
And he did it all based on never, ever, ever asking anybody for money. All the money just came in at just the right time. And there were some crazy stories in his biography that he documents. But I thought, what would George Mueller do? Well, the first thing he would do would not be in debt. He hated debt. And I realized, well, I've got one strike against me. And then I realized, though, but he would probably do something outrageous, something completely against the norm. And what would that be for me? I decided, we're going to give our way out of debt. And so I had a couple friends who met with me about that time, and they said, hey, Paul, how are you? Let's be honest. How are you going to avoid bankruptcy here? You're not, are you? And I said, no, I'm going to give my way out of debt. And that went over real well. And then I told my wife the same thing, and I told our kids the same thing. And of course, they're too young. They're just, picking their nose going, what, huh? But anyway, hope the kids aren't listening. But anyway, so January 1st, we started giving a large sum a week to some charities and nonprofits, church, things we cared about. And we started to give that same amount every week. And we really were just, figuring like something was going to happen that was good. Well, 4 weeks later, I was at a Subway restaurant, and I met a real estate developer there that I knew not real well. And I told him my quandary about this 5-acre parcel. And I said, if I could only sell those, subdivide that into 5 lots. And he said, well, you ought to try this. And he named a certain law in the law code. And I said, yeah, I know about that. That won't work. And here's why. He said, well, you might want to rethink that. And here's a way to think about it. And he just gave me some idea. And there was this light bulb moment. And I realized there was another way to look at that same law, which was basically it was a loophole, if you will, that just kind of hit me like a freight train. 2 days later, I was sitting in the county planning and zoning office, and I told the lady what I planned to do if she would allow me. And she looked up over her glasses, and she shook her head, and she just looked half disgusted, half happy, like laughing. And she said, I've worked here for X number of decades, and no one has ever come up with such an outlandish scheme. But you're right. You found a loophole in the law, and I can't prohibit you from doing it. So if you want to do that, go ahead. I won't stop you. And so we went ahead, and it took a lot of months, a lot of money. There were legal stuff. There was bank stuff, a lot of sweat and pain. But 13 months later, Dan, we were completely debt-free.
Wow, congratulations. And thank you for sharing that story.
Yeah.
Wow. So I'll transition a little bit to, what was going on, in the personal life with this enormous amount of stress. So you're married, you've got kids, you've got your health to take care of. How did you manage all that? It's nice to know you meditate. How long have you been meditating?
Oh, about 30 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've just been doing it for about 2 or 3, and I completely know the difference. It took me several months to get there.
Yeah.
But, now I don't miss a morning or an evening, actually.
That's great.
But so tell me a little bit how you got through it, all that confusion and stress, and still kept your drive.
This sounds kind of crazy, but I don't remember losing even 5 minutes of sleep over it. And that doesn't even make sense to me now. Like, I don't know why I wouldn't have, but I really think, I think I all along just thought it was just going to work out. And I don't remember being that upset. We sold 4 of those 5 lots in the very, very heat of the downturn. As the knife was falling from September to November of 2008, which were the worst months of the recession, actually, on paper at least, we were selling those lots, and nobody was buying waterfront lots then. Yeah. And if I told you the details of how hard it was to make it work, it was even much, much harder than I've told you, and it still worked. And I don't really know. Our family has, we're a faith-based family, and I really just believe that, we just really believed it would work out, and we believed even if it didn't, it was going to be okay in the end.
Wow. Yeah. So, it's it tells what kind of man you are to still be, standing and have a great marriage and healthy children. That's pretty cool. So during that time, did you find time to do other things? Was there, some balance, so to speak, or was it all work?
I mean, my income, if you will, not the gains, but my income, my regular income was coming from real estate sales. Like I mentioned, I have this website that generates leads, and those had mostly dried up. So honestly, I don't think I was even all that busy at that point. So yeah, I think I was okay on that way. I think I'm busier now than I was then.
What do you do in your spare time?
At that point or now?
Now.
Well, I'm involved. I play bass, so I play with a worship band locally here. Not very often, but I mean we do. I go fishing with my son in Canada once a year. I wouldn't call it spare time, but it's kind of an annual thing. I do go on dates with my daughter, my wife. I don't have a lot of hobbies. I really like windsurfing, but I'm a frustrated windsurfer because I've got pretty good gear, but I don't get out there very often. Sometimes where we are here in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia, if I pack the gear up at noon and it's real windy, by the time I get out on the lake and it's 2 p.m. or whatever, the wind has died. So it's just not as consistent as it is in places like the Bay Area where it's blowing hard all the time. So,
but you look good. You look good.
I do.
That's the same way with golf for me. I mean, man, I got nice clubs and great golf clothes, and same thing with skiing actually too.
Oh yeah,
gear.
Right.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Well, very, very cool. So, what is your vision now moving forward? What are some short-term and long-term goals? What do you see the economy doing? What direction are you going to go in your life? What's the plan?
Yeah, so one of my big goals is to tell the world about the horrors of human trafficking. Don't know what people have heard about that, but I'll tell you this. If you took the record profits, and I don't mean the average, but I mean the record profits of Apple, GM, Nike, and Starbucks, added those record profits together, double that number, that is about the estimated annual revenues generated by human trafficking.
Yeah.
It's a horror. I'd like to believe, Dan, that if I was alive in the 1800s, I'd be an abolitionist fighting against slavery. And if I was an adult in the 1960s, I would have been fighting for civil rights. Well, this isn't making headlines like the 1960s, and it's not causing a civil war like the 1860s, but it is a civil right. It is slavery, and it is a life ripped away from tens of millions of people. Since we started this podcast, about 500 people have been enslaved. And this is, it's a horror that it's happening on our watch.
Why do you think it's that it's not as, and we're hearing a lot about it here, and we're involved in that as well. But why don't you think it's like civil rights?
I don't know. I guess it's because it's not happening right in front of our face. People could see.
It must be happening in front of our face.
I mean, it's just like most of us don't know somebody who's been trafficked. Most of us don't know a family who lost their child to trafficking, but it is happening, and it's happening all over the world. And a lot of the people that you see on those posters and on milk cartons have been trafficked, as you know. And, I just finished a podcast with Monique Halm earlier, and she was telling me that 1 out of 15 children in Haiti is enslaved. And it's amazing. But like I said, it's in Haiti, or it's in the Philippines, or it's in India, and it's not. And again, it is happening in the U.S. And I've heard mixed numbers about how much it's happening in the U.S. But at any rate, I want to fight this. I want to raise awareness. I want to raise money, and I'm doing everything I can to try to raise awareness and fight this. So that's one of my big whys for the rest of my life.
Wow, that's very admirable. It's amazing. It's sickening, and it's hard to believe that problem is as big and large as it is. It's something I never heard about when I was a child. My parents never worried about me walking to school when I was 5 years old, and now I don't let your wife go down the street by herself. So it's sad. It really is sad. What else are you doing?
So I'm really trying to raise great kids. I've got 3 good kids, and then this other kid. That's a joke. I'm just kidding. I hope she's listening, but whoever she is. But no, I've got 4 great kids, seriously, and trying to raise a great kids, and hoping to have great grandchildren. Wonderful grandchildren someday. I'm involved in some different things here in my community, and I'm also involved in some relief work outside of human trafficking for people in underprivileged nations like India, Nepal, Bhutan, etc., Western China, etc.
Love it. So let's shift back quickly to Wellings Capital. What do you see on the horizon?
What's that? Oh, what do I see on the horizon? Yeah. So Wellings Capital, we were a multifamily syndicator, and we had such a difficult time beating our heads against the wall trying to find deals that made sense, and we couldn't. And so rather than overpay for deals, we decided we would rather broaden our focus outside of multifamily into self-storage and mobile home parks, and we did that. And I learned a lot about those in the last couple of years, and I learned on paper or in a book how to do a multifamily syndication I learned how to do a mobile home park or a self-storage deal. And, but I didn't know how to do it myself. I knew on paper how to do it, but I didn't know how to do it myself. And therefore I, realized, man, it would be really, really bad for me. Again, I'm going back 10 years. Would I want to invest in with somebody who hadn't done it themselves? And I realized, no, and I don't want to ask investors to. So that's when we got the idea that it would be better for us to partner with experienced syndicators. And the way we're doing that is we're doing a lot of work to vet these syndicators, vet their deals, and then we're bringing money to them to operate, to basically acquire, to grow and manage these deals.
Now, what book was it that you learned this from?
What book?
Yeah, you said you had read a book and learned about.
Oh no, what I meant to say was I knew from a book. In other words, I knew like on paper how to take a self-storage facility and double its value. Basically, you can buy a mom and pop facility, you can upgrade it, you can expand it, you can compress the cap rate by selling it to a REIT. I knew how to do it on paper or in a book. I knew I had the book learning, but I didn't know how to do it in experience. And I didn't have a team of people who had done it over and over and over. So we found those teams that did, and we're investing, and we're inviting investors to join us to invest in these large commercial deals.
Man, that's very cool. So if people want to invest or want to reach out to you, how do they get a hold of you?
So we are, right now, our deals are available for accredited investors only, though we may have a day when they're available for non-accredited investors, sophisticated investors as well. But they can reach out to me at our website, which is wellingscapital.com. That's WELLINGS, capital CAPITAL.com.
Thank you. Well, Paul, you are a great man. I admire your journey, and I admire what you're up to now. And I sure look forward to getting to know you a little bit more. And man, just very, very cool. And I'm really, really appreciative of you taking time today to be on the show. I really like.
You bet, Dan.
Thank you very much, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Okay, I'm honored to be here, and thank you very much. Hope to see you in person soon.
Thanks, Paul.
All right, thanks.
Bye-bye.